all the tactics that the intactivist organizations use, even the ones that we don't engage in, some which we maybe used to engage in but don't anymore, and some which we never engaged in, they all have a use. They all play a role, but the role might not always be what we think it is, what we think it's going to be. So, standing on a street corner at an AAP conference and assailing everyone who walks by you with a badge as a butcher and as not caring, and we don't know who these people are. Some of them are vendors. Some of them probably don't do circumcisions. Don't do circumcision. Most pediatricians really actually don't. It's You're making a point, but you're not necessarily changing anything. So if you're not changing anything with the people who you're assailing, I understand it. I mean, we've done it. But I think it's time for us, for Intact America, we need to move to a more sophisticated engagement with the system, because the other thing that we make the mistake of is thinking that these organizations owe us anything, and they don't owe us anything. I mean, AAP exists for the benefit of its members. Truthfully, if I write a letter to the executive director of the American Academy of Pediatrics, the only reason that person would even respond to me would be either politeness or in the hope it would, somehow, assuage my anger or something. But they don't owe us that. We're not their members. We have no standing with them. So we have to think of other ways to call people to task and engage with people.
So with this survey and the information you'll gather from the next survey, what's the process of developing a targeted strategy? In other words, once you get this information, how is it that you're going to figure out what tactics to use and which ones not to use, and where the greatest change is?
It's work in progress. We have some very smart consultants some of them are people I've known for, my 35-year history as a healthcare executive. And I'll talk to anybody, who has ideas. And we're very thoughtful. And sometimes I feel a little bit like, we thought we were going to do this, and now, we think maybe that's not the way to go. So we're very much in flux as to how to mount this, and the resources we need are obviously the resources we have are obviously a factor, because another thing that's interesting about intactivism is that I got a note the other day from somebody who said, was referring to somebody else in the movement, and said, I thought this person was working out of the goodness of his heart, not because he was getting a paycheck. And I thought, wow, like, we're still the mentality that you have to work for free for it to be valid. And you look at these big movements that have succeeded, whether it's the civil rights movement, whether it's the LGBTQ movement, and all of these, the anti-slavery movement, anti-racism, all of these human rights causes moved from being very fragmented grassroots efforts to being highly organized, well-funded efforts, because you're up against huge forces that are constructed to work against you. So you just can't. So you have to respond to the establishment you can respond to it in a very grassroots, decentralized way. And that, as I said, I think has its value. But you also need a highly organized, highly visible, highly professional response to, I mean, all of us, think maybe if I just set myself on fire, the steps of the wherever, like somebody would pay attention. not really, right? I go, wow, glad she's out of the way. Um, so we have to keep pushing. Another thing I'm doing, I think I should mention to you, I am writing a book. I wrote a manuscript length book a number of years ago. You might know this, Brendon, about circumcision and all the things that were wrong with it and the history. And it was, talking from my perspective, what was done, it was so boring, and our arguments are not that sophisticated. That's not the problem. We're right. We've said it all. And their arguments are BS, you know? So it's not like we're going to develop the magic bullet argument. We've got the magic bullet argument. Don't go cutting part of the penis off of a baby. I mean, what's more simple than that? So, so our challenge is not to refine our arguments or to find the slam dunk scientific response, because that'll never be adequate. It's that we have to figure out how to dismantle the machine. That's what really our charge is.
I love that phrase, dismantle the machine.
Yeah, I
I,
think I just said that for the first time.
I,
So
I want to,
my book is, then I'll just finish that loop and then we can go back to
sure.
this machine. So I decided that maybe a more effective, more interesting way to talk about the movement was in the form of a memoir. And I'm, thinking of John Lewis's memoir about the civil rights movement, Ann Richards, who was the head, Cecile Richards, Ann Richards was her mom, who was the head of Planned Parenthood for many years. And she's an incredible advocate, awesome woman, wrote a great memoir. And I've read, many memoirs of human rights activists and their story, how they evolved. So this is a story of my evolution into being an intactivist, and also of Intact America, which is, the organization that I had the privilege of being selected to run, and many other issues on the way that I hope will illuminate. For one thing, I hope it would be read by more than intactivists, right? Because they already know. So my hope is to create something that has a little bit more broad interest, and that, because stories are what really, this as a filmmaker, stories are what really motivate people to change.
Thank you for listening to the Brendon Marotta Show. If you liked this episode, please share it with someone else who would also like it, and then go on whatever platform you listen to the show on and leave a positive review. If you want to support the show directly, go to brendonmarotta.com/show and subscribe there. Paid subscribers get special unreleased bonus material and live events that are only available to them. Once again, that is brendonmarotta.com/show. Thank you for listening, and I will talk to you all later.